Routinely sleeping less than 6 or 7 hours a night demolishes your immune system, more than doubling your risk of cancer. Ha! Right? That's page 1. Sleep is infinitely more complex, profoundly more interesting, and alarmingly more health relevant. See? Alarming. In order to operate in this universe here, you'll spend 1/3 of your life asleep. Unconscious, essentially. What is going on with that? Night owls are not owls by choice. You're just like, and you can't take action. Why? Because we covered this 100 times. You don't have clarity, you don't know what to do, right? Clarity lowers anxiety and increases motivation. Hello, what's up? Showtime, episode. Episode 48, Why We Sleep. This is a book. We're going through a book here. We might go chapter by chapter because this book is dense. There's a lot of interesting stuff in it. And so, anything that I've gone through before book-wise, I've already read it. And I'm going back and pulling out the stuff that I really like. But this one, I haven't read yet. And so we're just going through it. So I don't know. There might be some chapters that I'm like, it's not worth really talking about. Maybe an honorable mention or something. But I should have looked here. Let's see. I think there's 16 chapters in here. Some of them are small. Some of them are longer. What do we got? 16 chapters. Look at that. And chapter 1 was like 4 pages, 5 pages. So, we covered 2 chapters today. And it's cool. There's some cool stuff. I think you're going to find it interesting. If you're interested in learning about sleep, I think, you're definitely going to learn something. That's for sure. Episode 48, Why We Sleep. It also goes into dreams later on. One of the chapters or 2 of the chapters or a whole section maybe. Goal of this episode is to go through the book, Why We Sleep, so you don't have to. There you go. So you don't have to, right? Isn't that great? Learn in depth about this critical component of health and longevity. And as always, we're going to have some fun. Outline of topics today. We've got updates. We've got before we get started, because, there's some things we got to cover before we get started. We got what we're going to cover today. So I think I'm trying to do this one a little bit different instead of just jumping into the book and letting it come as it goes, if that makes any sense. I'm going to talk about the things that I'm going to talk about. I don't know why I'm doing that, but maybe it'll be better. I couldn't quite get this one completely organized in my head. I worked on it on Sunday. Was that this Sunday? God, it seems like eons ago. It was. And then I worked on it again this morning. No, this went 2 Sundays ago. And I just couldn't, typically before I get done with the podcast, my prep, I can just kind of see the whole thing in my head a little bit. I'm like, all right, I got it. And so everything kind of flows. This one, I couldn't get it all wrapped up in my head exactly. So it might be a little shotgunny. We will find out. But I know there's a lot of good information, that's for sure. So I'm going to cover what we're going to cover today, potentially. And then we'll go to the book, and then we'll have some final thoughts. Final thoughts won't be very long today. All right, here we go. Updates. Updates. Golf. No idea. I have no idea what happened with golf because football. That's why. That's right. College football season has started, and that means Michigan was playing. If you're a Michigan fan, great for you. I know you're excited as I am, because last year was tough. We didn't really have it. We didn't have a quarterback. There wasn't a passing game, and somehow they managed to go 8-5. But this year, man, it was the thing. Like, I wanted to see this game because I wanted to see if this Bryce Young fella could, if he was everything he was cracked up to be. And I'll tell you, it looked fantastic. If you watched the game, it was really exciting to see a quarterback just run out. He wasn't designed running out of the pocket. If you trust your quarterback enough to run, to have him throw while he's running, you're developing plays like that, you have confidence in your quarterback. And he was like, it was awesome to see. Tigers' 3rd best record in Major League Baseball. They are 9 games up. Their L10 wasn't that great. I think it was 4-6 or something like that. Weather, the party's over up here in Michigan. Went from 90 to 65 super quick. I mean, I think it was like 50 in some of these mornings, maybe in high 40s. So it's cooling down. The end of summer is coming. Subscribers, Email, I bet you can guess the number, 62. We do zero promotion on that, so that is not surprising. And if you're not trying to push your website on the internet, nobody's finding it by accident. That is just not going to happen. But YouTube goes from 137 to 139. Spotify goes from 37 to 39. Massive growth. And Apple moved from 23 to 24. So lots going on there. Reminder, please submit your questions to Dennis at DennisFenrich.com. Before we get started, here we go. Before we get started, going through this book, Why We Sleep, written by, let's see. I already said all that. We're going to be going through this book, Why We Sleep. It's written by Matthew Walker, PhD. All right. Oh, yeah. And I'm going to read his bio. There's a short bio on the back here. And we're going to give it a little reader. Here we go. Matthew Walker, PhD, is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, the director of the Center for Human Sleep Science, and a former professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. He has published more than 100 scientific studies and has appeared on 60 Minutes, Nova, that's cool, 60 Minutes, not cool, BBC News, and NPR's Science Friday. Why We Sleep is his first book, and it was a bestseller. The book is pretty cool. Kind of funny that I'm reading a book that I haven't read yet, right? I had read the first 2 chapters, and I was like, this is awesome. For some reason, I always finish books that I read, but this one got lost. I don't know how. But anyway, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So that's his bio. Smart dude. All right. Give him applause. Smart guy. Couple interesting things. Every creature on the planet sleeps. So what does that mean? That means it's critical to not only your life, but apparently life across the board needs to sleep in order to operate in this universe here. You'll spend 1/3 of your life asleep, unconscious, essentially. What is going on with that? You know what I mean? Sure, it's recovering your tissues and your brain and all that stuff, but man, it's got to be something else going on with that. If you don't sleep, so, I like to think about order of importance. Like, how important is your sleep? Well, it's really darn important, right? So if you said, I'm going to base order of importance based on how long can I survive without it, then, we'll start at the here. Well, first off, everybody's maybe thinking of this, oxygen, right? If you don't get enough oxygen, you got 2 to 5 minutes and the party's over. And then you'd go water, I remember when I looked this up, but it was like 3 days, which was just crazy. It can't be 3 days, but call it 3 to 10, whatever that is. And sleep, 7 days. They ran some studies on rats. Maybe humans could go a little farther because you couldn't really do it to a human. And I don't think you get away with it with a rat today. But, they took groups of rats and they deprived them of not just sleep in general, but two specific aspects of sleep, the deep sleep and the REM sleep. And which one? The REM sleep rats died first. They died at 7 days, and then the deep sleep rats died at 8 days. So sleep, I used to hang around this group of people, and they would always say, nobody ever died from lack of sleep. And I was like, yeah, that's true, man. Cool, bro. But that's not true. People have. Hyperbolic. Okay, yeah. Another thing I want to say before we get started here, the book has a hyperbolic aspect to it, and I'm going to read one part of that. I'm just going to read that right now. What I'm going to encourage you to do is to not freak out, right? What do I mean by freak out? Like, oh my God, I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm going to, what's wrong? I got a lot, like if you already got a lot on your plate and then you're listening to this and you think, oh my God, I gotta get this sleep going too. This is too much. I can't do all this. Okay. You don't need to do that. Don't freak out. Just, either do the back pocket thing. Oh, okay, you know what? Sleep sometime. I'm going to have to start working on that. But right now I'm working on other things. Let me stick this information. Let me stick this in my back pocket. Or 2, you know what? I'm working on a ton of stuff and I'm super busy. Let me just pick one super easy thing that I'll know I'll do. And then I can start working on my sleep. But if it's going to overwhelm you to start to try and make changes in your life when it comes to sleep, then getting overwhelmed and adding psychological stress to yourself isn't good either. And typically, what do people do when they're overwhelmed? Oh my God, I totally forgot. Liquid death. I gotta go get my liquid death. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Sorry, Nathan. I've totally forgot liquid death here, and I just went to go get a drink, and I didn't have it. Sorry to leave you guys in suspense here. So, what do people do when they get overwhelmed? They don't do anything, right? Because overwhelm puts you in a freeze kind of state, right? You're just like, and you can't take action. Why? Because we covered this 100 times. If you don't have clarity, you don't know what to do, right? Clarity lowers anxiety and increases motivation. Remember that. So when you see clearly, oh, I can see exactly, I don't have, I've got my life really organized. Everything's going really, really well. And now, oh, well, you know what? I can see clearly how I'm going to add in a little bit of sleep here. I'm going to start working on that, and that's going to be great. Or you're like, that sleep thing, I can't do it. All right. Again, put it in the back pocket. Put it in the back pocket. Don't sweat. Don't be freaking yourself out. All right. Nothing ever good came out of freaking out. You know what I mean? Chill. All right. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to read this little hyperbolic section here. See if I can find it right quick. Yeah, here it is right here. It's on the first page. Let's see if I can find it. Routinely sleeping less than 6 or 7 hours a night demolishes your immune system, more than doubling your risk of cancer. Right? That's page 1. Now, why is he doing that? Because he's really excited about helping people understand how important sleep is. So much. I mean, he wants, this is kind of a theme throughout the book. Not that I know, I haven't read the whole book, but so what I've read so far, there does need to be a societal change when it comes to sleep. There's a lot of wrong, inaccurate, unhelpful thinking around sleep, and so there's changes need to happen. But again, freaking out about it doesn't help anything. And so it's kind of written in that regard. It's very it's going to get your attention and all that, clickbait type-ish, but the information's quality. And, who knows? Maybe if you write it from a very non-emotional, analytical perspective, people can't follow along, or the information doesn't actually create change. Maybe some people need that kind of impetus, that emotion to jar behavior change. So, not judging. I'm just saying I've come to learn that freaking out doesn't help. All right. Okay. What else we got? We will be covering 2 chapters today. Okay, so why sleep matters. Like I said, I want to cover some of these things to let you know what we're going to get into today. And so, chapter 1, there was basically 2 things that got out of chapter 1. The benefits of sleep we're going to talk about. And then also, it's got a cool section in there about what to expect from the book. So, what are we going to see? What's the kind of information? What's he going to be talking about throughout the rest of the book? So, that'll be cool because then you guys will know what to expect as we go through this book. Chapter 2, some super cool stuff that comes out of chapter 2. 2 things that make you sleep, right? So there's these 2 aspects of sleep that kind of work together or separate, really, that help you sleep. And I don't even know if the sections are so long, so maybe I'm just going to cover this right here. Deep brain circadian rhythm. And I don't think I read on that stuff because it was so long. I didn't know what to pull out. So I'm just going to tell you right now. So deep brain circadian rhythm. So basically, I'm sure everybody by now has heard of a circadian rhythm. Well, oh yeah, I'm actually going to cover it. They did this super cool experiment, which I'm going to read about, and figured out that it is not actually controlled by the sunlight, that it is a clock, an internal brain clock that runs regardless of what's going on, okay, which is a pretty cool story. And then the other component or lever on that is adenosine buildup, which is a molecule that builds up in your brain, and the more it builds up, the more sleepy you get, the more it's kind of like pushing you to go to sleep. And so when we sleep, that adenosine gets cleared out, and then we become alert again. And those 2 things operate independent of each other, which is kind of fascinating. But obviously they work together when they're lined up and make you sleep more, right? Like the clock is going, internal brain clock's going, hey, you need to get to sleep. And then the adenosine is building up and making you sleepy. I'm going to read a section that's going to cover some of that. Melatonin does not keep you asleep. Nope. I'm going to read on that. Jet lag. This is an interesting fact about jet lag. Adjust an hour per day. So, right, if you switch 7 time zones, it's going to take you roughly 7 days for you to get acclimated to that new time, and vice versa when you come back. Caffeine, 1 cup. Oh, this was interesting. 1 cup of decaf contains 15 to 30 milligrams of caffeine. What? Yes, there's still caffeine in decaf coffee. That is in there, but I don't think I read that. The ability to clear caffeine is genetic and is done by an enzyme. So some people clear faster than others. And also, we're going to cover some signs of not enough sleep, which I thought was a good section. So some of the stuff that's coming, and like I said, I couldn't get myself completely organized around that and how to structure that part right there, but it's going to be good. That's what I know. Time for some liquid death. Hey, when was the last time you guys heard the crickets? Oh, it's good. I wonder if that makes you sleepy. All right, here we go, guys. We're going to the book. Let's see what we got. Bam. Bam. All right. To the book. Yet sleep has persisted. Heroically so. Indeed, every species studied to date sleeps. This simple fact establishes that sleep evolved with, or very soon after, life itself on our planet. Moreover, the subsequent perseverance of sleep throughout evolution means there must be tremendous benefits that far outweigh all of the obvious hazards and detriments. Ultimately, asking, why do we sleep, was the wrong question. It implied there was a single function, one holy grail of a reason that we slept, and we went and searched for it. Theories ranged from the logical, a time for conserving energy, to the peculiar, an opportunity for eyeball oxygenation, to the psychoanalytic, a non-conscious state in which we fulfill repressed wishes. Which was Freud, I read that, I'm like, oh, that's Freud. This book will reveal a very different truth. Sleep is infinitely more complex, profoundly more interesting, and alarmingly more health relevant. See, alarming. We sleep for a rich litany of functions, plural, and abundant constellations of nighttime benefits that service both our brains and our bodies. There does not seem to be one major organ within the body or process within the brain that isn't optimally enhanced by sleep and detrimentally impaired when we don't get enough. That we receive such a bounty of health benefits each night should not be surprising. After all, we are awake for 2/3 of our lives, and we don't just achieve one useful thing during that stretch of time. I didn't quite follow this point, but he's making a point. We accomplish myriad undertakings, MYRIAD, and it doesn't say a myriad. I wonder if that's a typo. We accomplish myriad undertakings that, I think it is. We accomplish a myriad of undertakings that promote our own well-being and survival. Why, then, would we expect sleep in the 25 to 36 years on average it takes from our lives to offer one function only? That is interesting because, I think all of us listening to this and me reading this, we just know obviously sleep is doing a whole bunch of stuff. So, the thing about this guy was, and I don't get into it, when he decided to take on sleep, there was no real research on it, because his first step to do when he decided this is something he wanted to do is he went to go look into all the current research so he could get up to date, and there wasn't any. Like, he's like, oh my God, nobody is looking at this thing. And so I guess it was just kind of blown off, and people thought maybe it did do one thing, or, had a very simple view of it. So it's probably why he's making that point. All right, back to the book. Through an explosion of discoveries over the past 20 years, we have come to realize that evolution did not make a spectacular blunder in conceiving of sleep. Sleep dispenses a multitude of health-ensuing benefits, yours to pick up in repeat prescription every 24 hours should you choose. Many don't. This guy is British, I think, or English or something. So I think his wording is a little different. Within the brain, sleep enriches a diversity of functions, including our ability to learn, memorize, and make logical decisions and choices, benevolently servicing our psychological health. Sleep recalibrates our emotional brain circuits, allowing us to navigate next day's social and psychological challenges with cool-headed composure. We are even beginning to understand the most impervious and controversial of all conscious experiences, the dream. Dreaming provides a unique suite of benefits to all species fortunate enough to experience it, humans included. And there is some fascinating stuff on dreaming, which I've heard outside of this book, and I think that's what he's going to get into. Back to the book. Among these gifts are a consoling neurochemical bath that mollifies painful memories in a virtual reality space in which the brain melds past and present knowledge, inspiring creativity. Okay. Downstairs in the body, sleep restocks the armory of our immune system, helping fight malignancy, preventing infection, and warding off all manner of sickness. Sleep reforms the body's metabolic state by fine-tuning the balance of insulin and circulating glucose. Sleep further regulates our appetite, helping control body weight through healthy food selection rather than rash impulsivity. Plentiful sleep maintains a flourishing microbiome within our gut from which we know so much of our nutritional health begins. Adequate sleep is intimately tied to the fitness of our cardiovascular system, lowering blood pressure while keeping our hearts in fine condition. So, lots of good stuff going on with sleep. And who wouldn't like all those things to be better, right? Absolutely. They could said that in the AI cast. What does sleep do for you? Everything good. That's what sleep does. There is no negative health benefits from sleeping. I don't know why that's so funny to me. All right, here we go. What to expect, and this will wrap up chapter 1. We've got about a page here, page and a half maybe. A final comment on the structure of this book. All right, so we're going to talk about how the book is structured, which I think is important. The chapters are written in a logical order, traversing a narrative arc in 4 main parts. Part 1 demystifies this beguiling thing called sleep, what it is, what it isn't, who sleeps, how much they sleep, how human beings should sleep, but are not, in parentheses, and how sleep changes across your lifespan or that of your child for better or for worse. So we're going to get into the deets of sleep. We're going to demystify it. Part 2 details the good, the bad, and the deathly of sleep and sleep loss. He's British or something. We will explore all of the astonishing benefits of sleep for brain and for body, affirming what a remarkable Swiss Army knife of health and wellness sleep truly is. Then we turn to how and why a lack of sufficient sleep leads to a quagmire of ill health, disease, and untimely death. A wake-up call to sleep if ever there was one. I love hyperbole. It's awesome. Part 3 offers safe passage from, listen, man, everybody's going to die. You know what I mean? So, can't get past that. Part 3 offers safe passage from sleep to the fantastical world of dreams, scientifically explained. That's where I got it from. Yeah, so he's going to have a whole part on dreams, which is going to be fun. From peering into the brains of dreaming individuals and precisely how dreams inspire Nobel Prize winning ideas that transform the world, to whether or not dream control really is possible, and if such a thing is even wise, all will be revealed. That is the section I am most excited about. He says in here you can read it any way you want, but I'm gonna go through, because there's in the history of psychotherapy, the big book that I've read, the creative illness episode from. Freud was big time into tracking his dreams. It was kind of like one of his most popular books. I can't remember what it's called right now, that he had put out. And he was controlling his dreams. You know, he could remember he got to where he could remember every single dream every night. And it's just fascinating, because there's a lot going on there. Way more than what we currently think. That is for sure. All right. And then there's 4 major parts of the book here. And so Part 4 seats us first at the bedside, explaining numerous. Let me see. Part 4 seats us first at the bedside, explaining numerous sleep disorders, including insomnia. I will unpack the obvious and not so obvious reasons for why so many of us find it difficult to get a good night's sleep night after night. A frank discussion of sleeping pills then follows, based on scientific and clinical data rather than hearsay or branding messages. Details of new, safer, and more effective non-drug therapies for better sleep will then be advised. Transitioning from bedside up to the level of sleep in society, we will subsequently learn of the sobering impact that insufficient sleep has in education, in medicine, and healthcare, and in business. Well, the evidence shatters beliefs about the usefulness of long waking hours with little sleep in effectively, safely, profitably, and ethically accomplishing the goals of each of these disciplines. So he's going to go into like those areas of our professions that prioritize not sleeping basically and stand up, and he's going to bash him, it sounds like. Concluding the book with genuine optimistic hope, I lay out a roadmap of ideas that can reconnect humanity with the sleep it remains so bereft of. A new vision for sleep in the 21st century. All right, so that section sounds pretty cool. Details of new, safer, and more effective non-drug therapies for better sleep. I'm sure that jumped out for a lot of people. That jumps out for me. You know, I learned that this is like 7-8 years ago. There was a Navy SEAL guy. I can't think of his name right now. He was kind of the original sleep dude, because you think about Navy SEALs, you know, I mean, they got to be up for long periods of time when they're out on a mission, right? So they had to get good at operating without sleep or operating under sleep deprivation. And then, so they'd be off on these missions and they'd go, you know, whatever, a mission and a mission and a mission. And this guy was the doctor. He was a Navy SEAL, but he was a doctor for on base. And so basically he's looking at testosterone levels, looking at blood work, he's looking at inflammatory levels, and he's like, everybody's jacked, right? The things are not going well for these people and they're fried. And so the biggest impact that he found was, hey, we got to get them restored back through sleep. We got to get them back on a sleep schedule so their body can regenerate itself, so the brain can regenerate itself. I don't know what happened to that guy, but he was kind of the OG on the sleep. Okay, I'll finish up this chapter and we will go into chapter 2. I should point out, you need not read this book in this progressive 4-part narrative arc. Each chapter can, for the most part, be read individually and out of order without losing too much of its significance. I therefore invite you to consume the book in the whole or in part, bullet style or in order, all according to your personal taste. In closing, I offer a disclaimer. Should you feel drowsy or fall asleep while reading this book, unlike most authors, I will not be disheartened. No, that's funny. Indeed, based on the topic and content of this book, I am actively going to encourage that kind of behavior from you. Knowing what I know about the relationship between sleep and memory, it is the greatest form of flattery for me to know that you, the reader, cannot resist the urge to strengthen and thus remember what I am telling you by falling asleep. So please feel free to ebb and flow into and out of consciousness during this entire book. I will take absolutely no offense. On the contrary, I would be delighted. Now that's comical. You know, I've been under, a lot of stress lately, a lot of work, not sleeping good, high cortisol. Started to disrupt my sleeping patterns. I'm telling you, that is why I couldn't get my brain wrapped around this thing, because it's just not working really well right now. So how relevant of a time for me to be going into sleep. Okay. All right, let me get a drink here, and we're going to get into chapter 2, guys. Chapter 2 is going to get into some of the things I said earlier, because I can't remember. What's this button? That was a relevant button as well. I legit forgot what that button was. All right, here we go. This is a crazy experiment I'm about to read to you. Here we go. I think you're going to like this. And I'm jumping in the middle of a chapter here, all right? Surprisingly, it took another 200 years to prove that we humans have a similar, internally generated circadian rhythm. But this experiment added something rather unexpected to our understanding of internal timekeeping. It was 1938, and Professor Nathaniel Kleitman at the University of Chicago, accompanied by his research assistant Bruce Richardson, were to perform an even more radical scientific study. It required a type of dedication that is arguably without match or comparison to this day. The one I didn't read was about plants. So it was cool, but I didn't, I'm not reading the whole book, right? We're pulling pieces out. So this is really cool. Kleitman and Richardson were to be their own experimental guinea pigs. Loaded with food and water for 6 weeks in a pair of dismantled, high standing hospital beds, they took a trip into Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, one of the deepest caverns on the planet. So deep, in fact, that no detectable sunlight penetrates its farthest reaches. It was from this darkness that Kleitman and Richardson were to illuminate a striking scientific finding that would define our biological rhythm as being approximately 1 day, circadian in parentheses, and not precisely 1 day. No space on the memory fucking card. Well, we are back in action. Memory card died. Where the heck was I? In addition to food and water, the two men brought a host of measuring devices to assess their body temperatures as well as their waking and sleeping rhythms. This recording area formed the heart of their living space, flanked either side by their beds. The tall bed legs were each seated in a bucket of water, castle moat style, to discourage the innumerable small and not so small creatures lurking in the depths of Mammoth Cave from joining them in bed. So these guys go deep into a cave and they're going to find out if sunlight is what's telling people to wake up and go to sleep. And they've got their bedposts in water so they don't get creepy crawlies all over them at night. How they sleep, I don't know. They're getting no light for 6 weeks. It's 1939. These people are wow. Experimental question facing Kleitman and Richardson was simple. When cut off from the daily cycle of light and dark, would their biological rhythms of sleep and wakefulness, together with body temperature, become completely erratic, or would they stay the same as those individuals in the outside world exposed to rhythmic daylight? Oh, they want to see if they get off rhythm with. Interesting. So not only their sleep, but their temperature as well. In total, they lasted 32 days in complete darkness. Not only did they aggregate some impressive facial hair, but they made two groundbreaking discoveries in the process. The first was that humans, like Demarian's heliotrope plants, remember they did an experiment on plants, they did the same thing basically, generated their own endogenous circadian rhythm in the absence of external light from the sun. That is, neither Kleitman nor Richardson descended into random spurts of wake and sleep, but instead expressed a predictable and repeating pattern of prolonged wakefulness after about 15 hours, paired with consolidated bouts of about 9 hours of sleep. Well, isn't that something? The second unexpected and more profound result was that their reliably repeating cycles of wake and sleep were not precisely 24 hours in length, but consistently and undeniably longer than 24 hours. Richardson, in his 20s, developed a sleep-wake cycle of between 26 and 28 hours in length. That of Kleitman in his 40s was a little closer to, but still longer than, 24 hours. Therefore, when removed from the external influence of daylight, the internally generated day, in quotes, of each man was not exactly 24 hours, but a little more than that. Like an inaccurate wristwatch whose time runs long, with each passing real day in the outside world, Kleitman and Richardson began to add time based on their longer internal generated chronometry. 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 I don't- Chronometry. I don't know. CRONNO. Chronometry. Yeah. Okay. And that's where I'm going to stop. Well, isn't that something? So, man, they were in complete darkness. They made it 32 days. They were shooting for 6 weeks. Obviously, that was not fun. And interestingly, you know, you would have thought that the extra stress, there's no way you could do this by yourself. Obviously, you'd go mad. I mean, they were in dark for 32 days. How's it even possible? Anyways, so it is internal. It is internal, but it seems to be longer than. So the day must have some effect. Interesting. All right. So another section I found interesting was that when you want to wake up and when you fall asleep has a strong genetic component to that. And that is what we are going to read about now. There's a lot of reading. All right, here we go. My rhythm is not your rhythm. Although every human being displays an unyielding 24-hour pattern, the retrospective peak and trough points are strikingly different from one individual to the next. For some people, the peak of wakefulness arrives early in the day, and their sleeplessness trough arrives early at night. These are morning types and make up about 40% of the populace. They prefer to wake up at around dawn, are happy to do so, and function optimally at this time of day. Others are evening types and account for approximately 30% of the population. They naturally prefer going to bed late and subsequently wake up late the following morning or even in the afternoon. The remaining 30% of the people lie somewhere in between morning and evening types with a slight leaning toward eveningness, like myself. Interestingly. An adult's owlness or larkness, although known as their chronotype, chronotype, is strongly determined by genetics. If you are a night owl, it's likely that one or both of your parents are a night owl. Sadly, society treats night owls rather unfairly on two counts. First is the label of being lazy based on a night owl's want to wake up early in the day. That's what it says, due to the fact that they did not fall asleep until the early morning hours. Others, usually morning larks, will chastise night owls on the erroneous assumption that such preferences are a choice, and if they were not so slovenly, they could easily wake up early. However, night owls are not owls by choice. They are bound to a delayed schedule by unavoidable DNA hardwiring. It is not their conscious fault, but rather their genetic fate. Now, obviously, there's going to be some people who are lazy, right? I mean, we have to consider that there is a genetic component. And I mean, I read these first two chapters before. So I remember I was doing morning classes and I had noticed after reading this that, yeah, my brain really didn't wake up till 9:00. Like I could go and I could function and I could run class and I could formulate a good attitude and I could do whatever. So right around 9:00, I was like, blink, and I was like ready to do some work. So that was interesting. Okay. I was going to read a lot more, but man, stop. Melatonin. All right. Here's a little thing on melatonin. Well, let me read this. He gives a little hypothesis as to why, some people genetically would be waking up earlier and some people genetically would be waking up later. And I found this interesting. You may be wondering why Mother Nature would program this variability across people. As a social species, should we not all be synchronized and therefore awake at the same time to promote maximal human interactions? Perhaps not. As we'll discover later in this book, humans likely evolved to co-sleep as families or even whole tribes, not alone or as couple. Appreciating this evolutionary context, the benefits of such genetically programmed variation in sleep/wake time preferences can be understood. The night owls in the group would not be going to sleep until 1 or 2 a.m. and not waking until 9 or 10 a.m. The morning larks, on the other hand, would have retired for the night at 9 p.m. and woken at 5 a.m. Consequently, the group as a whole is only collectively vulnerable, i.e., every person asleep, for just 4 rather than 8 hours, despite everyone still getting the chance for 8 hours of sleep. That's potentially a 50% increase in survival fitness. Mother Nature would never pass on a biological trait. Here, the useful variability in when individuals within a collective tribe go to sleep and wake up, that could enhance the survival, safety, and thus fitness of his species by this account. And she hasn't. So, yeah, interesting and a strong possibility of why that would have happened. All right. So, you got people watching out during the night. And then second shift comes on at 5, and those people have only been asleep for 4 hours. Okay. In this way, so this is a little bit on melatonin. And I think this is important to understand. I knew this a long time ago. I think when I was listening to Dr. Keith Parsley, I think that was his name. I think that was the seal that I was talking about earlier. So, anyways, here it is. So it's going to talk about melatonin. In this way, melatonin helps regulate the timing of when sleep occurs by systematically signaling darkness throughout the organism. But melatonin has little influence on the generation of sleep itself, a mistaken assumption that many people hold. To make clear this distinction, think of sleep as the Olympic 100-meter race. Melatonin is the voice of the timing official that says, "Runners, on your mark," and then fires the starting pistol that triggers the race. The timing official, melatonin, governs when the race begins, but does not participate in the race. In this analogy, the sprinters themselves are or other brain regions and processes that actively generate sleep. Melatonin corrals these sleep-generated regions of the brain to the starting line of bedtime. Melatonin simply provides the official instruction to commence the event of sleep, but does not participate in sleep itself. So melatonin triggers sleep, but it does not keep you asleep. And that is the point. Okay, guys, a little bit on jet lag right here. This is interesting. West or east, jet lag still places a torturous physiological strain on the brain. Torturous, there it is again, hyperbolic. And a deep biological stress on the cells, organs, and major systems of the body. And there are consequences. Scientists have studied airplane cabin crews who frequently fly on long-haul routes and have little chance to recover. 2 alarming results have emerged. First, parts of their brains, specifically those related to learning and memory, had physically shrunk, suggesting the destruction of brain cells caused by the biological stress of time zone travel. Second, their short-term memory was significantly impaired. They were considerably more forgetful than individuals of similar age and background who did not frequently travel through time zones. Other studies of pilots, cabin crew members, and shift workers have reported additionally disquieting consequences, including far higher rates of cancer and type 2 diabetes than the general population, or even carefully controlled matched individuals who do not travel as much. So listen, man, if you're in the airline industry and you're traveling time zones, listen, if you're getting no sleep at all the time, you should definitely start working on that. All right. Maybe it's not hyperbolic in that situation. All right. Moving on. And this is the whole thing where he goes into adenosine and the sleep-wake cycle, which we don't read. And we're going to wrap up right here. Thank God. This has been a rough one for me. All right. Don't freak out, wrapping it up. Am I getting enough sleep? So this is going to give us some signs of if maybe we're not getting enough sleep. All right, here we go. Setting aside the extreme case of sleep deprivation, how do you know whether you're routinely getting enough sleep? While a clinical sleep assessment is needed to thoroughly address this issue, an easy rule of thumb is to answer 2 simple questions. First, after waking up in the morning, could you fall back asleep at 10 or 11 a.m.? If the answer is yes, you are likely not getting sufficient sleep quantity and or quality. Second, can you function optimally without caffeine before noon? If the answer is no, then you are most likely self-medicating your state of chronic sleep deprivation. I'm going to go on and read more, but there you go, right? There's 2 things to check. After I wake up, do I feel the need? I got to take another nap. I got to get back to sleep for a little bit at 11 or 12. And after I wake up, can I function? Or am I just straight to the caffeine in order to function? If that's the case, you're going to want to start working on your sleep at some point. Maybe today's not the day. Maybe this week's not the day or this month. But hey, in the back pocket, I got to get this going in the right direction sometime here. If you got the available attention, you're not overwhelmed. Hey, listen, maybe we start working on this now, or pick one small thing to start working on. All right. Both of these signs you should take seriously and seek to address your sleep deficiency. They are topics and a question that we'll cover in depth in chapter 13 and 14 when we speak about the factors that prevent and harm your sleep, as well as insomnia and effective treatments. In general, these unrefreshed feelings that compel a person to fall back asleep mid morning or require the boosting of alertness with caffeine are usually due to individuals not giving themselves adequate sleep opportunity time, at least 8 or 9 hours in bed. When you don't get enough sleep, one consequence among many is that adenosine concentrates remain too high. I'll talk about that in a second. I think I did. Like an outstanding debt on a loan, come the morning, some quantity of yesterday's adenosine remains. Oh. Then you carry that outstanding sleepiness balance throughout the following day. Wow. Also, like a loan in errors, this sleep debt will continue to accumulate. You cannot hide from it. The debt will roll over into the next payment cycle and the next, producing a condition of prolonged chronic sleep deprivation from one day to another. This outstanding sleep obligation results in a feeling of chronic fatigue, manifesting in many forms of mental and physical ailments that are now rife throughout industrialized nations. There's still more to read, but oh my God, that makes total sense. So we talked about it earlier. You have that deep that circadian rhythm deep in your brain, and that's on rhythm all the time. That's built in. Doesn't matter day, night, what's going on. That thing is going to try and tell you to go to sleep. But also, there's that molecule, adenosine, that builds up during the day, and that is just making you sleepy as it's building up. So when we go to sleep, if we sleep long enough, we clear all that molecule out. But if you don't sleep long enough, you carry it over to the next day, and that's why you're sleepy, and that's why you're groggy. Your brain still wants to clear out the adenosine. Huh, that makes total sense. Back to the book. Other questions that can draw out signs of insufficient sleep are: if you didn't set an alarm clock, would you sleep past that time? If so, you need more sleep than you are giving yourself. Do you find yourself at your computer screen reading and then rereading and perhaps rereading again the same sentence? This is often a sign of a fatigued, underslept brain. Do you sometimes forget what color the last few traffic lights were while driving? Simple distractions is often the cause, but a lack of sleep is very much another culprit. Of course, even if you're giving yourself plenty of time to get a full night's shut eye, next day fatigue and sleepiness can still occur because you are suffering from an undiagnosed sleep disorder, of which there are now more than 100. Huh. So you could be giving yourself enough time, but it could be a sleep disorder. And the most common is insomnia, followed by sleep disordered breathing or sleep apnea, which includes heavy snoring. Should you suspect your sleep or that of anyone else to be disordered, resulting in daytime fatigue, impairment, or distress, speak to your doctor and seek a referral to a sleep specialist. Most important in this regard, do not seek sleeping pills as your first option. You will realize why I say this come chapter 14, but please feel free to skip right to the section on sleeping pills in that chapter if you are a current user or considering using sleeping pills in the immediate future. Hold off on sleeping pills. I don't think, is anybody taking sleeping pills anymore? This was written in 2017. I think sleeping pills have really come out of vogue already, to be honest. And I think this guy had a lot to do with it. Last little piece here, and then we're wrapping it up. In the event it helps, I have provided a link to a questionnaire that has been developed by sleep researchers that will allow you to determine your degree of sleep fulfillment, called SATED, SATED. It is, it's a weird word. It is easy to complete and contains only 5 simple questions. They're probably the same questions you just asked, huh? All right, so there we go. 2 chapters down. we'll see which ones we get into. We're definitely going to get into the dream one. We're definitely going to get into the sleeping pills and all the recommendations on sleep and all that. So looking forward to that. So let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. I'm going to say the same thing again. Again, don't freak out. You're going to be fine. Becoming overwhelmed by adding more to your plate than you can account for only adds psychological stress to yourself. Make a mental note that you will work on your sleep when you get your exercise and nutrition in line or whatever else it is you are trying to implement. Or, as an option, pick one small thing you can do now and start. Okay. Next episode is going to be another AI special. Hormones Simplified, Your Body's Hidden Messengers. As if we didn't give you enough information. So we're going to talk about hormones. We're going to break it down from the AI. I thought that was a blast. It's very easy for me to prepare, that's for sure. And we keep the podcast rolling. Well, this is episode 48, getting super close to my goal, which was to do one a week for a year, one a week, FOR a year. And, we've got 4 more to go to hit 52. I know I had that snafu in there where I didn't get the podcast out due to some technical difficulties. So I did miss 1 week, but we're going to hit 52 for sure. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. If there's anybody that you know that could use some information on sleep, share this episode with them. Appreciate you guys for listening. Even though this one was a bit choppy, hopefully Nathan could make it as smooth as butter for you guys. All right, guys, have a great week, and we will talk very soon, or you'll hear very soon, or whatever it is you think you're doing when we're having these conversations. All right, guys, we'll talk with you. Bye.